think anybody that thinks that AI can't do some aspect of their job is sorely mistaken. I think of like the most extreme thing in my world, as a plastic surgeon, I absolutely think AI and robots will be able to do operations at some point.
What's up, everyone? Welcome back to Compound Wisdom. I'm your host, Steve Sood, and today I'm actually joined by Dr. Jonathan Kaplan. He's a plastic surgeon and the founder of Dr. Will. Now, Jonathan is building a provider-to-consumer platform that gives real clinicians the same technology as a big D2C brands have without losing any sort of doctor-patient relationship. Think smart async consults, e-prescribing, compliant marketing, and really high-risk payment processing all wrapped into one workflow. We're going to break down how a viral moment forced a pivot, why compliance is a moat in this space, how providers can compete with Roland Hims, and really what Jonathan is building next with labs, sleep, and GLP-based path for alcohol use disorder. Now, Dr. Kaplan, welcome to Compound Wisdom. Dr. Kaplan, thank you for doing this podcast with us. Very excited
Happy to
for
be
this
here.
one. Yeah. Now, one of my favorite questions asked is, how in the heck did you get into healthcare, man? Tell us about your journey.
Healthcare, it started a long time ago. My father was a general surgeon in a small town in Louisiana, and so I was able to, back when you could bring your child to work day, even if that was in the operating room, I was able to start watching it go to the operating room with him when I was 11 years old. So I'd get to go in and could even scrub in. Now, I wasn't doing any of the operation, of course, but the idea was that when you're 11 or whenever you go, usually you just have to stand on a stool and like observe. But he was able to get the staff to allow me to scrub in, get sterile, so I could actually be up against the operating room table. Yeah. And that way I could get a much closer look. Of course, I didn't do anything, but it was just a much better view than having to stand 5 feet away. So went and started watching him operate when I was 11. And then around 16, I was in the doctor's lounge with him, waiting to go back in for another operation. And a plastic surgeon in there asked my dad if I wanted to come and watch the plastic surgeon. My dad's like, yeah, absolutely. But he was always encouraging me to look at other fields. He wasn't necessarily expecting me only to consider general surgery. Yeah. So I went in with the plastic surgeon, watched him, and he was doing a cool case. Not what you think, not a facelift, not a boob job, but it was a woman that had a cancer on her leg, and he was removing the cancer, but the hole was too big to close up primarily. So he took a piece of skin from her neck, and she was a heavy smoker, so she had this really craggly neck skin. And he took a piece of skin from her neck to close up the wound on her leg. But because she had such a wrinkly neck, where he took the skin from the neck, the resulting incision or resulting scar from that was lying right within one of her neck creases. So it was like perfectly hidden. Yeah. And I just was blown away how you could take skin, use one part of the body to fix another part of the body. So that's how I decided to go into plastics specifically.
Yeah. How old were you when this happened?
I was 16 at that point, but family friends had said that they had asked me when I was 4 years old what I wanted to be when I grew up, and I told them I wanted to be a surgeon. Of course, I didn't know what that meant. I was just telling them what my dad did. But luckily, starting at 4 and moving on, I never got disillusioned with the field, so I continued on and became a surgeon and ultimately a plastic surgeon.
That's awesome. How did you go from that into, obviously, eventually telehealth?
So I finished my plastic surgery training in 2007, went back to Louisiana. I was an employed physician when I went back. And it was funny, my brother, who's a vascular surgeon, my brother-in-law is a bariatric surgeon. They were both giving me a hard time back in 2007 that I sold out. Became an employee of a hospital, which was unusual in Louisiana at that time, but not the rest of the country. But they were giving me a hard time selling out, being an employed physician. And then fast forward 6 years, 2013, I come out to San Francisco, go into private practice, take over an existing practice, moved out here with my wife. And at that point, I was going into private practice. The two of them had become employed physicians over that period of time. So, but while I was an employed physician at that hospital, I noticed that patients were always calling, asking how much things cost for cosmetic procedures. And I realized that there was no good way of doing it at the time. Like the office staff would be on the phone with them for a really long time, explaining to them the pricing of things. And then at the end of it, you tell them the price, and the patient would just say, okay, thanks. And they'd hang up and you wouldn't get anything out of it. And the other option was to say, well, we're not going to tell you how much it costs until you come in for a consult. But nobody wants to come in and divulge their deepest, darkest insecurities only to find out they can't afford it. So that's when I started a company called Build My Bot at the time. Then that became Build My Health, and that eventually became Dr. Well. But what we started was with price transparency. So consumers could check pricing through a price estimator on a doctor's website, but only after they put in their contact information. And then we had all the pricing in our database. So once they put in their contact information, they would get an automated email with a breakdown of pricing. It wasn't like, give us your contact information and then we'll follow up with you.
Yeah.
So we started out with price estimators. Then that evolved into, well, if I can check the pricing, I might want to buy it. So that's how we incorporated the e-commerce.
Yeah.
And then that evolved into subscriptions for Botox, where patients could be charged a little bit each month and then come in every third month, get their Botox. And that's how we started to get into the whole telehealth thing, because we had at this point, I was like not in Baton Rouge anymore. I was in San Francisco, and we had patients coming in for tummy tucks and body contouring procedures. They weren't good candidates for surgery. Their BMI was too high. So rather than turn them away, our nurse and nurse practitioners suggest we start a weight management program. And then that was even before the Ozempic craze. So we were offering them, phentermine or coaching. The nurse and nurse practitioner really wanted to offer coaching, so that they were excited about that. And then about a year after we started that, that's when all those drugs like Ozempic and Wegovy eventually went on the FDA shortage list. And that's when we were able to start getting everything from compounding pharmacies. And that's when we pivoted, because I had these subscriptions set up within the Build My Health platform. We needed to handle all these subscriptions patients were requesting for semaglutide. And we went viral with TikTok. I was talking about Mindy Kaling losing weight on Ozempic, and that went viral. And so we got this influx of patients. So we were like, how are we going to handle all these subscription payments? And like, oh, Build My Health can do that. So that's how we eventually got into the telehealth and eventually rebranded to Dr. Well.
That's awesome. Now, I want you to touch on a little bit of what Dr. Well does today and what the trajectory is for some of your, talk about a little bit about your roadmap as well.
Yeah, well, I mean, Dr. Well, the easiest way to think of Dr. Well is if you think of Row or Hims, these are direct-to-consumer websites that have made it very easy for consumers to get access to medications through asynchronous consultations, filling out a questionnaire online, which is all you need to prescribe the medications in 31 states, and the other 19, you have to have a follow-up visit. But anyway, so they did, that's one good thing that they've done is Row and Hims. They've made it very easy to access the medications. The only problem is after the patient signs up, their relationship is with a website, and the only person who's reviewed their record is an independent contractor who they'll never interact with again. Even if they have problems, they call back to the website or reach it back out to the website. It'll be a different independent contractor. So what we've done at Dr. Wells, we've taken that technology, that tech stack, and we've put it in the hands of independent providers, not contractors. We've given them the ability to see patients in their office and then send them a link through the Dr. Well platform that makes it easy for the consumer to enroll online through a mobile-friendly website, or see patients online through our asynchronous consultations, online questionnaires that we call Dr. Well Smart Consults. So all that technology that makes it easy for the patient to sign up, makes it easy for the patient to submit prescriptions to a compounding pharmacy. They can do all of that within our platform, and we get them the lowest cost of goods. Since we're providing medications for 200 plus providers now, we get the lowest cost of goods. Anyway, all of that stuff that I just mentioned, the provider doesn't have to build any of that out on their own. They don't have to figure out all the technology behind all of that. So that's what we've done is we've taken that tech stack, put it in the hands of individual providers so they don't have to figure it out. And that's the big benefit to them. And then the big benefit to the patient is that now they're actually connected to an actual medical practice, not some independent contractor.
It's the same doctor every time that they see as well.
Correct. It's they've got that continuity of care that they actually have an office to call, and whether it's the nurse or nurse practitioner or doctor, they've got the same people that they're able to call if they have any side effects. They have that continuity of care that direct to consumer websites will never be able to do because that's not their business model. So we like to call Dr. Well a provider to consumer PTC platform as opposed to DTC. And it's really, quite frankly, if it's DTC taken to its responsible end of making it easy for consumers to get access, but actually having continuity of care.
Yeah, which is huge. Now, you guys are doing, can you touch on a little bit some of the medications that you guys do, C4? Is obviously GLPs.
Yeah. Doing all the GLP-1s and peptides. We're able to get access to peptides like BPC 157, Glow, Wolverine, all through a 503A pharmacy, no research grade meds. I mean, especially if we're supporting, 200 plus providers and growing, we've got to do everything responsibly and legally. And so we've got, legal counsel that's a pharmacist and an attorney that's helping us with our guidance. And so, so we're getting peptides through 503A pharmacy, hormone therapy, hair growth therapy, anything a compounding pharmacy offers, we can get the patient and the provider access to. And then one of the things that we've expanded into, and this is something that our nurse practitioner, who's our chief nursing officer, realized, is that patients who were on semaglutide, maybe they weren't losing as much weight, and so we'd switch them over to tirzepatide. They had better appetite suppression, but the food noise came back. Yeah. And so we realized that, okay, semaglutide, better for food noise control, so they stopped thinking about food as often. And then tirzepatide is better for appetite suppression. So she's like, well, why don't we combine them? These are both 2 FDA-approved drugs. Yeah. Combine them into a one vial, and maybe it's off-label, but not illegal. And so we're able to get a compounding pharmacy to help us with the formulation. And so now we're offering this combination, which call it GLP-1 squared. We've already submitted the trademark application for it. We've actually already submitted the patent, a provisional patent for GLP-1 squared. We've got a whole regimen for it, stepwise fashion. The doses of the combination are actually lower than the commercial brand. So in this day and age where, Hims is ruining it for everybody and duplicating Wegovy pills without any differentiation and like totally infringing on their patent, incurring the ire of Novo Nordisk, incurring the ire of the FDA, people are understandably worried about, okay, well, this is bringing unwanted attention to the compounding industry. Well, if you're worried about semaglutide with B12 or glycine, if you don't feel like that's enough of a differentiator, that's where GLP-1 squared is your safe harbor, because it's clearly not commercially available. It never will be commercially available. Novo Nordisk and Eli Lilly are never going to team up and produce that medication. So that's what we have now, GLP-1 squared. But to really make it legitimate, we're not just going for weight loss. We're looking actually alcohol use disorder. So we're actually in the process with a contract research organization to get an IND, investigational new drug application approval from the FDA for GLP-1 squared. So
exciting.
With downward pressure on price, I think compounding pharmacies and other people are going to want to start to have some ownership of their drugs, get into the drug development space like we have. Yeah. And so we've got some compounding pharmacy partners helping us with that. So that's one aspect of our future. So very exciting.
That's really exciting, to say the least. What about AI? What are you guys doing around AI? It's like usually the hot button. You see it everywhere now, especially with a lot of doctor stuff as well.
Yeah, that's funny you say that, because I was always saying that during the GLP-1 craze that, or not back then, I mean, it's still going on, but the two most interesting topics I was always talking about, the things that people are always talking about, are GLP-1 and AI. Yeah. And I was glad to be a part of both of them. Yeah. From an AI perspective, what we're doing is our development of our platform. We still have all, US-based coders and developers, but we're also using AI in revamping our platform, getting it to market faster. So that's how we're using AI. We're not using AI so much for patient care, but we're using AI very much for redevelopment of our platform, making it even more user-friendly, making it even easier for consumers to get access to the medications, making it even easier for us to integrate with different partners. So we're absolutely using AI, but more on the platform side rather than the consumer-facing side.
Are you eventually going to do stuff on the consumer-facing side, or is that on your guys' roadmap?
I think it's always natural that, right, like we have a smart consult so like a patient fills out the online questionnaire, the provider reviews it. Yeah. It would not be unusual or unreasonable for the provider to be able to create an AI-powered response to the patient. They just need to make sure they're checking it, the details.
Yeah, for sure.
Because one of the things we do with our smart consult is that the patient fills out the questionnaire, the provider reviews it in the back of the Dr. Well. And so this immediately puts them on the same playing field as Roe and Hims, because they don't have to build out their own online questionnaire. Yeah. But after they review it, they then respond, one-way messaging. They can then respond, and so eventually we could have AI responses to assist. Yeah. But the other thing that we currently have is that along with the response, you can include a link to a package that would be appropriate for the patient. So the patient, 2 a.m, says they're interested in getting on weight loss meds or hair treatment or peptides, you can review that at 2 a.m. if you're awake.
Yeah.
Or the next morning, 7 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday morning, you can review that and reply to them and include a link for them to sign up for a package. So the patient can then click on that link and enroll. And so you've interacted with that patient over the weekend or after hours, and they've signed up for that medication. So you're generating revenue while you're not even in the office. So that's already what we can do, is including making it easy for a patient to sign up. But yeah, I could see AI interaction or AI supplemented responses to the patient, not necessarily making the recommendation of the medication, but certainly the response.
Personal question how far out do you think AI is from being able to prescribe, if you were to guess? Obviously, there's a legal side of things, which is, going to be much longer. At least that's what I think. But how far out do you think from a technology standpoint, and then the legal side as well?
Well, already in Utah, there's a company that's working with the with Utah that is allowing, and then the reason it's Utah is that they think that at this point the state law can govern this, and they don't have to get the FDA involved yet. Yeah. But there's already a company using AI to do refills on prescriptions, and I think that just in general, to give you a more all-inclusive answer to your question, I think anybody that thinks that AI can't do some aspect of their job is sorely mistaken. I mean, I think of like the most extreme thing in my world, as a plastic surgeon, I absolutely think AI and robots will be able to do operations at some point. And I know people think, oh, that's crazy, but think about this. There's already the Da Vinci robot, which is helping with laparoscopic surgery. Of course, that's being driven by a surgeon sitting at a console and directing it. I'm not questioning that. I'm not saying they're acting autonomous at this point. However, without me actually knowing this, I know without a doubt that Da Vinci, the company, is recording all of those operations. They're recording all of the arm movements of those laparoscopic instruments that are being driven by the surgeon. And there's no doubt there's going to be a point where, while you may still need a surgeon or a nurse practitioner or a PA or some sort of surgical assistant in the room hooking up all of the equipment, and maybe the surgeon is, at least initially, making the incisions, there's going to be a point where those robots have, after having ingested all of that data of all those surgeons all across the world doing the operations, especially the repetitive operations, that they're going to learn ways to do this on their own. There's going to be autonomous robots that are going to be able to do the operations. And the sad thing is all these surgeons are teaching these robots unknowingly how to replace themselves.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think AI will have an aspect in all of it.
To 5 years, 10 years?
Oh no, I think way sooner than that.
Yeah, I agree.
I wouldn't be surprised within a couple years there will be an autonomous robot doing an operation on a patient in a third world country. That's kind of sad to say, but I think that's probably where it will start.
Yeah, it's usually how it goes. Yeah, I don't know if you saw what Elon said, that he said doctors will be replaced in the next few years, which he's usually very early with his timelines. I still think there's going to be a world of exactly what you said, for sure. I agree.
I feel better. I didn't actually hear him say that. I agree with you that he is always very very aggressive on his timelines, but I didn't know that he said that specifically. But yeah, so I'm glad. I feel better. I'm in the same camp as him in that way of thinking.
Yeah. Now let's talk about peptides. Obviously with a lot of the rule changes that are coming about, what's your thought process on peptides, and what do you think it's going to be like in the next few years?
Right. So within peptides, it's funny, in medical school, we talked about peptides. They were just proteins, but now it's definitely a certain buzzword. It has a very specific meaning. So we're like, we're talking about these longevity peptides like BPC 157, TB 500, combined together, the Wolverine or Glow, which is BPC 157, TB 500, and copper, all combined. There's peptides out there that people have a lot of belief in, that they can really improve longevity, help with recovery, wound recovery, exercise recovery. And there's not a lot of great data. My feeling in general about them is that at best they work, at worst they do nothing. I don't think at this point there's any evidence they're dangerous.
Yeah.
But they are on a Category 2 list with the FDA, which means they're not allowed to be compounded. However, with RFK Jr. being a big fan of peptides, including like methylene blue is not maybe the first one people think of, but that's one example. And sounds like he is on testosterone replacement therapy. So he's certainly into longevity. Yeah. And my understanding, and supposedly there's a press release being waiting in the wings to be released. What's that?
Are you talking about the reclassification?
Correct, exactly.
Yeah.
There's a press release that everybody supposedly has seen. Different attorneys for various pharmaceutical trade organizations are aware of them moving these peptides off the Category 2 list and being made readily available. But there are already 503A pharmacies that are compounding these because their impression is there's not going to be enforcement while they're waiting to be moved off the Category 2 list. So we are at least getting them from a 503A pharmacy. Providers just have to decide what their risk tolerance is.
Yeah.
But I guarantee you're in much better footing if you're getting these from a 503A pharmacy than if you're getting them from a research grade pharmacy, because research grade, even on their website, they say they're not for human use. So it's like, I'm surprised there's not more patients that are litigating over that.
Oh, for sure. I mean, you have 16-year-old. You have 16-year-olds on, TikTok selling retatrutide. It's like, what the heck's going on here?
Yeah, all looks maxing.
Yeah.
I mean, the thing is, I wouldn't even think a patient would have to really claim anything significant. They would just say, they sold me research grade peptide. It says not for human use. And I know that some of these labs will say, oh, we have a consent form that you can have the patient sign, but you can't have the patient sign away their right to sue you for you doing something illegal. I mean, it's not like you can sign away your right for, prosecuting somebody for murdering you, even though you gave them permission to. It's like, it's insane.
Yeah.
So I'm surprised there's not more litigation around the patients against the research grade pharmacies, because they're totally in the wrong. And I mean, there's an example that I've talked about in some of my webinars. There was a doctor in Kentucky that was selling research grade semaglutide, and then I have a copy of their plea agreement from last April, where they got fined $250,000 and up to 3 years in prison. I don't know if they've actually had to do any prison time, but they signed the plea agreement knowing that was a possibility. Wow. I think the thing that was particularly got that doctor in trouble, aside from selling research grade semaglutide, is he was buying it all from SAF Research. And SAF Research stood for Swole as F Research, and I think also that it was clear that he knew what he was doing was wrong, because he would like pay the research grade lab via Venmo, and he would say it was like for he was like buying it for pizza or he was just making up excuses of what the money was for. So I think that was the part of the problem, was he knew what he was doing was wrong.
Wild to say the least. What do you think? Obviously there was a whole GLP craze. Do you think when they get reclassified, there's going to be like a similar craze with peptides?
I think we're already seeing the craze right now, but yes, there's definitely room for growth. No question about it. And there'll also be a lot more players. I think you'll actually see a lot of players shake out. All the research grade labs, like people won't feel like they need to get those anymore, even though they may be less expensive. As you bring in more legitimate 503A pharmacies offering the peptides, that will drive the price down. And people will say, oh, well, I don't have to buy this research grade peptide for this low price and then send it off for third-party testing, because that's what people are saying on TikTok. They're like, get third-party. It's like, okay, let's do the math. Let's say you buy the peptide for $50. I'm just making up numbers. And then you spend $100 with your cohort of friends to do third-party testing on it. That's $150.
You might as well.
You can maybe buy the peptide for $200 from a 503A pharmacy. That's a $50 difference. I get it. But maybe your peace of mind is worth $50. And so that's what's going to happen. As these get moved off the Category 2 list, more legitimate players will come in. All the illegitimate players will be shaken out. And
but the price, a lot of the research companies, man, they're just getting shut down left, right, and center right now, rightfully so.
They really are. And patients are, going to have to scramble to find somebody. And that's kind of where Dr. Well and our providers come in, is that we can offer you rates that are less expensive than Trump RX and what you can buy on, the direct, like Lilly Direct and NovoCare, which they're starting to differentiate themselves, call themselves direct to patient. So that I don't know if it's just semantics, but like the Rose and the Hims are DTC. The NovoCares, the Lilly Directs are referring to themselves as DTP, direct to patient. And then, of course, Dr. Wells referring to ourselves as PTC. Provided to consumers. So, it's that's all those patients will be looking for. And the demand is just going to keep growing. I mean, it's not really that more people are taking a slice out of the pie. The pie is just getting bigger because people are realizing how amazing these medications are. Not so much the peptides. They're all going to, I guess, they realize the GLP-1s really are amazing. And they're like, well, if this once a week shot is this effective, well, let's try these other things.
Yeah,
And
they start feeling better. They want to try other things now, which is cool. It's cool to see,
it
from a
is.
perspective of health, for sure. For you, I'm sure you see that all the time.
But the fact that there's actually something you can do now, I mean, like, you don't have to just keep telling a patient, diet and exercise.
Yeah.
It wasn't fair to tell them that when the food supply chain, it was making everybody insulin resistant, and it didn't really matter what they did to some extent.
What kind of impact do you think longevity is going to have on big pharma?
I think they'll all get into it. They'll start buying. I think it'll be interesting to see some of the big pharma buying some of the peptides and trying to make them more legitimate. And maybe not like BPC 157 because it's already out there, and it's like maybe there's no financial incentive to go spend the money on clinical trials. Yeah. But I think they'll definitely be looking more into other peptides, and they're already doing this a little bit with some monoclonal antibodies to help with mitigating lean body mass loss, which can happen with any type of weight loss. So they'll recognize where the future is, and they'll definitely start getting into that. I don't think they'll develop any of it themselves. I think they're just going to start buying startups.
Yeah, I could see that as well. What stack are you on, man?
Yeah, so I am using I'm using GLP-1 squared at a low dose, and it's really been great for me as far as what's that?
Microdosing it.
Yeah, I wouldn't say microdosing. Maybe it's higher than a microdose.
Yeah.
I'm right now. I'm on 3.5 milligrams of the GLP-1 squared, which is relative to the tirzepatide dose. It's like 3.5 milligrams of the tirzepatide, and a little bit more, and about 0.35 of the semaglutide in our formulation. But I am on the GLP-1 squared. We've actually had over 1,000 patients on it, and these are all documentable numbers. I'm not just making them up. Yeah. But over 1,000 patients that have taken, it's actually 250 unique patients who have taken over 1,000 doses of GLP-1 squared since April, since we released it and made it available. So we definitely have a nice group of patients, nice cohort of patients that are on it. No serious adverse effects. We would certainly have heard about it by now. But yeah, so I'm taking about 3.5 milligrams of the GLP-1 squared. And then I'm also doing NAD. That's my stack, is the NAD. And I take that before working out. And the idea behind NAD is that as you get older, your NAD levels, which are the precursors to ATP, which is what your cells use for energy, that the NAD levels get lower as you get older, like after you pass the age of 40. But I will also point out that even though the NAD levels go down, is it clinically significant? Does that really mean you have less ATP to make? Like maybe your NAD levels go down, but maybe there's still enough NAD to make enough ATP and have enough energy. So I just want to always be serious about all this. But that's what I'd use before my workouts. And I do feel like the NAD about 30 minutes, it's kind of like pre-workout. People drink energy drinks with caffeine. Yeah. I think the NAD 30 minutes before working out, I feel like it gives me a higher level of stamina throughout my entire workout. I was always making it through the workout, but now it's just a higher level of intensity throughout the workout. So that's my stack.
I love that NAD for pre-workout. That's awesome. Are you guys doing anything around stem cells or exosome products or?
No. I'm not. I'm certainly familiar with them, but no, not anything like that. Just because that's. If you're talking about peptides and category 2 listings, exosomes and stem cells, they're also in this kind of gray area within the FDA. So that is, it is something that we have access to, specifically exosomes. Like we have a manufacturer that we work with for exosomes, and our providers can get access to those through Dr. Well. But me personally, no, I'm not offering any exosomes or stem cells.
Okay, cool. Now, one of the last things I want to touch on with you, Dr. Kaplan, is you're very unique, when I say that as a compliment, where you're big on social media, compared to any other doctors. Can you touch on that and how that started and transpired and where you're at with it right now?
Yeah, social media, it's a tough one. I mean, I got involved with social media in my practice in 2016, and I teamed up with Dr. Miami in Miami, a plastic surgeon, for those listening who might not know who he is. At one point, he was like right up there with the most viewership is DJ Khaled on Snapchat. So that's where we got started with on Snapchat back in 2016. And we got traction there. And that's when I got the Dr. Miami's, who runs his practice, Rosie, Sion, she came up with the idea of calling me Real Dr. Bay, REALDRBAE, not BAY, for the San Francisco Bay Area, but being Dr. Bay, just to sound hip for the kids. And so that was really one of the best decisions I made, is working with them and getting that handle, Real Dr. Bay. And because it was early enough on in 2016, I was able to get that handle on Snapchat, on TikTok, and not TikTok, sorry, not at that point, but on Snapchat, on Instagram, and Facebook, and I think even LinkedIn. So Real Dr. Bay was how I got started there. But I didn't really take off. Like, I was definitely doing better than I could have done on my own. It was really successful. But the thing with social media, you got to keep banging your head up against the wall, and hopefully finally something will come together. No guarantee it will.
Yeah.
And the thing that really came together for us was in 2022, at the end of 2022, Mindy Kaling lost a bunch of weight on Ozempic. And as I mentioned, we did a TikTok, and that went viral. And that's how we got our first big influx of patients for our weight management program. But then I got a social media manager who really understood social media. And you'll have a lot of people reach out to you. I certainly did over the years. That'll say that can help you with social media, and maybe they mean well, maybe they're charlatans. I don't know, but they don't know anything about social media.
Yeah.
They just think that anybody can do it. They think that they do social media a bunch on their personally, so like they would be good at it, but they're not good at it, and they're just getting a payday.
Yeah.
And so I finally found somebody at the end of 22, beginning of 23. Oh, and the way she found me, by the way, is that she was searching somebody on TikTok, because people were using TikTok as a search engine rather than Google. She was searching TikTok for a plastic surgeon in San Francisco that did masseter Botox. It helps narrow your face, but also it relaxes the muscles. So if people have grinding or TMJ, it helps with that. So she actually was searching me on TikTok for masseter Botox in San Francisco, found me, came in, and she really did have a background in social media, had worked for did social media for a couple of corporations, and then she decided to go out on her own. So that's how she found me. And then she pitched the idea to me in a separate meeting to help me with my social media. And so she really helps me with TikTok and Instagram. And I could tell you everything that she taught me at the beginning, and none of that is relevant anymore. That's the thing, is you can't just hire somebody and think, oh, I'm going to take their ideas and then I'm going to go off and do it on my own. Because in a week and a half, 2 weeks, whatever they told you doesn't work anymore.
Yeah, algorithms change.
Yeah, everything's changed. The algorithms changed. And I remember, like, for a while when we first started TikTok, you had to record everything in TikTok and you had to use their editing CapCut, or it wouldn't go viral. But now that doesn't matter anymore. You can record it outside of TikTok and import it after you edit it, and it still does just as well. Those are the kind of things that made a difference. Early on, you would not just hashtag things or use certain words in your comments. You had to actually say the words, because the algorithm was picking up on your voice. The AI was picking up on it. I don't know if that matters as much. Actually, it maybe matters as much, but in a bad way. Like, you can't say Ozempic anymore. That'll throttle your results, your views. So these are things that I've learned through her, but they're a little bit irrelevant now because we've already had to stick and move. And so, but I mean, it took a lot of my head banging against the wall before I found somebody. And now, and the content is a little bit different. Maybe the endings are a little bit different between TikTok and Instagram. I will give a shout out to an app called ManyChat that helps you respond to patients faster and give them a link of something they're looking for. So you can provide some call to action or some actionable item in your post. But ManyChat, all one word, ManyChat. Anyway, so that's social media for me. It's TikTok, Instagram. I don't really do anything on Facebook, although I think a lot of what I do on Instagram gets reposted to Facebook. Responding to people is important, which is why I use that ManyChat. But you don't have to engage as much as you think, because if think about like Kim Kardashian, like how much is she really responding to the thousands of comments she has on her post? Yeah. But yeah, social media is a tough one because you just got to get lucky, either naturally have it, which I don't, or find somebody that does know knows the system and can keep up with the algorithmic changes. That's really hard to find.
Awesome. Amazing stuff, man. Now, how we like to end the call is, the person before, they ask a blind question, not knowing who you are. So I'm going to ask you that question. And actually, we covered a little bit about it earlier today too. And then you're going to ask a blind question for the next guest. So the guest
All right.
prior is very well known actually in this space as well. He said his question is, what do you think the next 24 months look like with research use only peptides? And it's a two-parter. And then he wants to ask, what happens to the healthcare landscape and what happens to big pharma as these get more commercialized and potentially regulated?
Right. So I guess we did touch on a little bit. I think over the next 24 months, they'll come off the Category 2 list. 503A pharmacies who are not already in the space will get into the space, and that will be a little bit of a price driver. It'll drive the price down so that there'll be no reason to go to research grade pharmacies. And I would say all the research grade pharmacies, which I don't even think you call them pharmacies, the research grade labs, they need to start working on their certification for a 503A licensure or 503B. It's a higher lift, heavier lift. So that's what I think is going to happen over the next 24 months. It's going to become even more legitimate, which how can you say that's a bad thing? Yeah. And then what the second part of the question was, and I think we touched on it too, is that I think big pharma will start to realize that's the future. I was at a meeting recently where they had a lot of private equity investors, and they were all gung-ho on the longevity space and how that's growing. But they were also very down on the GLP-1 peptide space. Yeah. Because they were like, it's like the stroke of a pen could eliminate all of the work with GLP-1s and coming over. But I just thought it was funny. They were talking out of two sides of their mouth, and I don't think they realized it.
It's the same thing.
You can't be all gung-ho on longevity if you think that all of those things are going to go by the wayside, because longevity is not going to be driven just by supplements anymore, because people I think are going to find out probably supplements don't work. Yeah. They're going to, even if it's a placebo effect, they're going to think that me injecting myself with a legitimate medication from a pharmacy is probably more beneficial than than a nutraceutical or a supplement. Yeah. So that's where I see those things going.
Awesome. And what's your blind question? It can be anything. Doesn't have to even be healthcare related for the next guest as well.
I would say Roe or Hims. Which one?
Okay.
Which one? Who do you think has a better future?
Roe or Hims? I would say Dr. Well. I'll pick that one.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
All right, Dr. Kaplan, this was amazing, man. Thank you for doing this podcast with us.
Thanks for having me. Always a pleasure.
Thank you.